I had just finished a battle against my eternal demon, Super Monkey Ball Adventure. Before that, I came off of reviewing a game called Sonic 3D Blast, developed by the same publisher. That game was good, so when I got to Super Monkey Ball Adventure, I was mystified by such a frustrating experience. How could one developer make a game that bad? Surely there had to be better out there from them. I needed Traveler's Tales, the company who did this, to be redeemed. Surely mankind wouldn't stoop to that low. I did my research and found a game highly praised called Lego City Undercover. I knew it was time to go to a place that no YouTuber had ever gone before.
Talking about how the Wii U was a failure.
What do you want me to say here? It's been said 100 times, but the marketing for the Wii U sucked. No one knew if it was a new console or an add-on. I remember as a kid, I had friends who thought it was supposed to be an iPad competitor, and when they found out the tablet couldn't be used outside of their house, they didn't buy it. Should have waited 5 years. But the console still released. Oh boy, did it release. I think the Wii U's initial launch was fine. It gets a little more hate than it deserves. There were no major system sellers at launch, but there were still some great titles in here. Nintendo Land being the primary tech demo, which, as a game, I thought was better than Wii Sports. I'm sorry. And other great titles like New Super Mario Bros. U, a standard Mario game, but still a pretty good game. There was Scribblenauts Unlimited, a game that no one talks about, Zombie U, Game Party Champions, but then the next year that followed was complete trash. You gotta realize there was basically no support from Nintendo in 2013. I owned a Wii U, actually, I bought it at launch, and the next year was horrible. There was some Game & Wario came out, but that game basically was just a tech demo, at very best, a spiritual successor to Nintendo Land. New Super Luigi U was just DLC for New Super Mario Bros. U. There was Pikmin 3, which was a great game, but not really a system seller, and nothing else. Why was this released in 2012 if there were like no games? Third-party support around this time was unfortunately pretty bleak. You pretty much either got complete shovelware or Xbox 360 ports. They did bring over some bigger third-party games like Madden and Call of Duty, but like, are you really gonna buy a Wii U for that? Especially when Xbox 360s around this time were becoming dirt cheap and were still supported. But there was one company who tried to develop a genuine exclusive title for the platform. Our good friends from Traveler's Tales were making Lego City Undercover, an exclusive, original Lego adventure for the Wii U. In a prequel on 3DS, ignore that though, this is a celebration for the Wii U, goddammit! The idea for Lego City Undercover was roughly sketched out as far back as 2010, but Nintendo came to Traveler's Tales with the idea that the two companies would co-develop this game for the upcoming Wii U. Yeah, Nintendo actually had quite a bit to do with this game. It released fairly underwhelming sales at first, but sold better over time, with the Wii U version reaching nearly 2 million copies sold as of 2019. Which, you know what? For a third-party game on the Wii U, that's not bad. The sales being whatever at first were not Traveler's Tales' fault even. The Wii U in general was a commercial disaster. People weren't buying the console. So, like every game that came out on the Wii U, it would receive a port to the next generation consoles in 2017 to Xbox One, PS4, Nintendo Switch, and PC. The Nintendo Switch version somehow runs almost worse than the Wii U version, besides load screens. This was conceptualized as one of the first open-world Lego games, and took heavy inspiration from Grand Theft Auto. But did? This was, in my opinion, one of the first games that used the gamepad in an interesting way. And looking at the lifespan of the entire console, might be one of, if not the best use of it. I'm serious, it does a really good job. You could hold it up to investigate buildings like it was some sort of super intense secret radar. You could listen into audio conversations and you'd get calls on it. So how did they translate it to other consoles if this game was designed and built for the gamepad? Well, honestly, they did it just fine. And this was the game that made me realize the Wii U's gimmick was entirely useless and added basically nothing. Sure, you can kind of tell this was meant for a Wii U, but the game still plays great without the gamepad. The calls come up in the bottom corner now. You can use the camera control to do investigating with the right stick. It plays fine. Actually, it's kind of nice not to have to hold up a piece of plastic around the room. It hurts my arms.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. This is the first sort of original game that Traveler's Tales had made, or at least a subsidiary of them had did since, Super Monkey Ball Adventure.
As stated earlier, Lego City Undercover is kind of similar to something the likes of Grand Theft Auto, but in a way it's more or less a parody of both those types of games and a plethora of films and media. You play as Chase Mccain, who wins the award for most generic white person name ever crafted by humanity, who comes back to Lego City after being in witness protection for telling everyone that his love interest, Natalia Kowalski, was the one responsible for sending the antagonist of this game, Rex Fury, to jail in the previous game. So, yeah, this is actually explained in that previous game, Lego City Undercover. The chase begins for the 3DS. Do you get it? Do you get it? His name is Chase. The 3DS game is basically a demake-ish of the Wii U title and came out about a month later. It uses the same assets, the same city, with new missions and the prequel story, although now it's not as open world, as it has loading zones for specific areas, and it's missing quite a bit of voice acting, probably to save space on the cartridge. But look at this. This is pretty damn impressive for the 3DS. I do want to talk about this game more, but I think I'm going to save it for another video. There's a lot to talk about here. Regardless, this sets up the story for Lego City Undercover, so I did have to mention it right now at least. You get back to the police station and meet the police, which the game developers made out to be a bunch of clowns and donut-eating buffoons, which is like a stereotype, but also not really wrong. Here we meet Frank Honey, who's supposed to be the main comic relief character. You see, the game developers definitely just had a checklist out of every stereotypical role you can possibly imagine. You got your main lead, your love interest, the comic relief's love interest, the evil boss, the evil villain, the eviler villain.
But it's okay that these characters are movie stereotypes. It's very clear that this game wants to kind of play along with that. So instead of feeling like a ripoff, it's more tongue-in-cheek. What?
There are so many pop culture references in this game, ranging from references to movies like The Matrix to outright buddy cop flicks like Starsky and Hutch. So if you ever find yourself doing some form of a movie cliche, which you will throughout the story, just know it's not supposed to be cheesy as much as it's supposed to be cheeky. Or maybe that's just their excuse to be unoriginal, I don't know. You meet up with your ex-girlfriend, Natalia, who dyed her hair blonde to change her appearance after being outed. Jason and Natalia have a will they, won't they type of relationship, which, you know, for most games and movies might be fine. But you know what? I really don't feel anything looking at Lego characters. It's just weird. I will say the voice acting is particularly pretty good. It's not going to win an Emmy or anything, but it never really feels cheesy. And the writing for this game, even without the pop culture references, is just fantastic.
Don't worry, I'll buff right out.
I actually theorized at the time and still maintain that this game probably led to the Lego Movie, an original feature film in theaters that had really similar writing and was known to be really funny. If you like that movie, I think you really like the story in this game, and vice versa. It feels kind of like a spiritual successor to it. Since you're looking for Rex Fury, you need to work with other villains undercover throughout the game to build pivotal relationships and connections and work your way up the crime trees. These guys just have you steal objects mainly, such as a moon buggy and the bell pepper emerald. But these secondary villains are some of my favorite characters in the game, as they're very much that type of so bad that they're funny villain, another movie stereotype, like Bowser in Paper Mario. Before Nintendo decided that fun was a bad thing for that series, you end up going to Rex Fury's base, discover that he's not the true villain, everyone please gasp, the world is ending, you go to space in a level that's way too impressive and elaborate for a Lego game, you save the world and everyone's happy, except for the villains. Now look, obviously this is a very short retelling of the game, the plot is a lot more in-depth than I made it sound, but I'd rather not turn this section of the video into a Wikipedia article. Play the game yourself if you want the full thing. Point being, the story is great in the ways that it needs to be, and a little bit more. It's a perfect length with the right amount of beats, and it's addicting, while never getting too serious. I think my favorite thing about Lego City Undercover story is that there's never a static moment. You're always going to different locations. Compared to a game like Grand Theft Auto 4, you're always kind of restricted by it being a city. There's only so much you could do with that concept since, well, it's a non-fiction game. You can't just go to the moon or else the game really wouldn't make any sense. It would take you out of the immersion. Saints Row kind of struggled with this for a while. The early games were basically the same as GTA, but since we're all chummy Legos here, it's entirely rooted in fiction, and as a result, the writers knew they had all the freedom in the world to go nuts, and they went for it as a result, and I'm glad they did. Ultimately, this game knows it's a walking, talking meme. My favorite dumb moment here is when one character early in the story is named Mikey Spoilers, who tells you a literal spoiler about the game. Now that is hilarious. You can do anything and it makes sense. You got a karate dojo here, outer space, mines. It never takes itself too seriously. You want to ride a T-Rex out of a museum? Sure, go for it. It's just another Tuesday here. There are two areas where the gameplay primarily takes place. The first are the levels, and the other is the vast open world of Lego City. The levels are about what you'd expect from any other Lego game. They're fairly restricted in scope, the type where you have to do a few tasks before going to the next area, and I do have to say that I think the gameplay, while good, is just a little bit shallow. For one, there's basically no difficulty. While I have played this game before recording footage for this review, I can't really remember struggling with any level in this entire game, save for maybe the end boss. Besides losing some studs, the main currency, you really don't take any punishment for dying. There's unlimited lives. Although it sort of is nice, not every game needs to be the hardest game ever made. And after the hell I went through playing Monkey Ball Adventure, I'm glad for it. Throughout the levels, a main mechanic is simply building objects out of other bricks you find by destroying other Lego figures. Here's some advice for you. If something's blue and white, destroy it instantly because that will create objects that help you climb somewhere else, like getting a bouncy pad, getting something that lets you bounce off of a wall, things of that nature. It doesn't always come to building and creating stuff. There is quite a variety of gameplay, some puzzle sort of things, and some very unique things to levels, like one level you're in a fire station, you have to spray buildings, when the concept of this is never used again. There's a decent chunk of combat in this game as well. It's actually quite common, but honestly, this never bothered me as much as it did a game like Sonic Unleashed or Pac-Man World 3. Despite it not being super in-depth, I think what helps this is when you visit Barry Smith's dojo. Pretty much an entire half of this level is dedicated to mastering combat. It's done a teeny bit methodically, but honestly sets you up for the rest of the game and seriously teaches you how to play it. You learn how to do some basic move series such as blocking and throwing your enemies off of a f***ing cliff. It's not particularly great combat, but it's surface level enough not to be confusing or annoying, and not overdone to the point where it's annoying, so whenever the sections would pop up, I never felt too bothered by them. There are minute-sized distractions at most, and break up the monotony instead of being the monotony like the other games I mentioned. The biggest gameplay device in Lego City Undercover is the 8 different costumes to play as during the adventure. One is just Chase Mccain, who does nothing. So you never use this past the first level, but it still takes up a slot, which kinda sucks. You have a cop costume, this gives you a grappling hook and the ability to use the scanner I talked about earlier. There's a robber costume, this lets you open up safes, destroy ATMs, use a crowbar. You also get a paint gun, like any good robber has.
Yo, this is a robbery. Everyone put your hands up. I have a paint gun. I'm about to turn you green if you don't pay my taxes for the next year.
There's also an astronaut skin, you get a stun gun, can open up mysterious astronaut boxes, can teleport, and even can arrest aliens throughout the city. I will let you come to your own conclusion on what kind of joke the Lego developers were trying to make there. It's kinda messed up, honestly. There's a farmer skin, you keep a chicken in your pocket that you shoot eggs with. Yeah, let's say farmers do that. You can also fly with this chicken, losing height as you do, kinda like the cuckoos, the chickens from Ocarina of Time. Next up is the Fireman Costume, which lets you use an axe to break down doors, save cats, which you just put in your hat for some reason. I guess this is the cat in the hat. Ugh. And also lets you spray a fire extinguisher, which just sprays water. Do the game developers know how a fire extinguisher is supposed to work? I don't think they do. It doesn't spray water. While 99% of this game controls pretty well, the fire extinguisher controls really suck. It never feels like the water hits where you want it to aim. It's kind of like trying to pee when you've had too many drinks. There is a reticle of some form, but it never locks on what you need it to. Lastly, there's a Construction Man costume, which gives you a pneumatic drill you can use on certain terrain to form water sprouts and fix electrical issues. You can also take a copy break, because no one but construction people do that, obviously. Is this even a real trope or stereotype? Are there even Construction Man stereotypes? I don't know. The costumes are obviously supposed to be the main gimmick of the game. As the title implies, you're going undercover. I think the costumes are fairly cool, but again, maybe just a bit shallow. At the end of the day, there are some true similarities between the outfits, and it can boil down to just being in a specific costume only to press the A button. It is a way to keep you engaged throughout the level, so I'd rather they be here than not, obviously, as you constantly do have to be thinking about which Lego costume to be using. You can switch to them by either using a scroll wheel or by pressing L and R. Either or is fine. One thing that kind of sucks about these levels is you can never 100% them on a first go around, as you're always going to be missing characters throughout the story. I think that games that don't let you finish something right then and there are kind of a mixed bag. On one hand, I get it. It does promote some replayability and gives you a reason to go back later if you're into that. But on the other hand, it really does suck playing some of these levels and just not being able to interact with half the world. Like, oh, that looks cool. I can't do anything with that. On that note, there's actually one final costume technically that you unlock in the final level, being Rex Fury himself. This costume, which takes up the robber slot, can open up walls that have like telephones on them. I know they aren't telephones, it just kind of looks like one. You know what sucks is that in the final levels, they put these here before you can even unlock Rex Fury, so you have to replay the final level twice. In each level are gold bricks, a standard collectible that does nothing, but also there are red bricks. The red bricks are pretty much a cheat code system, some of which are pretty basic, like multiplying the amount of studs you can collect, but there are also some fairly practical ones, such as adding more hearts and increasing your scanner's capabilities. Speaking of cheat codes, I didn't know where to add this, but I find this hilarious. During a load screen, Frank Honey gives you a website to go onto, which leads to a survey. I filled it out just out of curiosity. You guys forgot the Wii U version! I didn't really expect anything out of this, but if you do fill it out, you get 2 cheat codes, giving you in-game costumes. It's pretty cool and a nice little bonus, although you could probably just find these by searching them on Google without the survey, but whatever. I bet Lego is just dying for my input on a 10-year-old game. You guys are welcome. The levels are all fun and good, right? But what makes Lego City Undercover turn from a 10-hour experience you breeze through in a weekend to selling your soul to the Lego Corporation is the vast open world that this game provides. The world is broken up into 22 different sections, or as this game calls them, districts. Throughout the districts are the vast amount of collectibles, such as shooting pigs in a cannon back to the farm, taking coffee breaks, putting cats in hats, destroying ATMs, destroying boulders with confetti on them, watering flowers, activating disguise booths, doing free runs, activating train machines, constructing super builds, drilling the ever-lifting out of floors, blowing up statues with dynamite, arresting people stealing vehicles, arresting aliens, arresting games, then you become a hypocrite and steal vehicles yourself, conquering districts, spraying fires, completing time trials, collecting gold bricks, collecting red bricks, collecting vehicles, and collecting people. Okay, let's just take a step back here. Some of this I already talked about, some of this is kind of just the same, but there's a few mechanics here that add quite a bit to the Lego City world. Constructing super builds is one of my favorites. Basically, throughout the game, you run across these blank slates that require a certain amount of bricks to build upon. You can either collect super bricks that are in increments of 1,000 and 10,000s, or while playing the game normally, if you destroy something, you get like a 4. Okay, so basically just pick up super bricks. You can do this by using your scanner or just by pure exploration, of course. Sometimes these will be requirements to beating a level or section, but thankfully they always leave you just the perfect amount of super bricks nearby. That's nice of them, you know, when you finish the game. Also, your super bricks are multiplied by 2 if you beat the game, so if you do want 100% this game, I recommend you hold off on these so you can get the best bang for your brick. The car theft missions are pretty cool. I like that there are some side missions here, although what sucks about them is, let's say you rob a car, you drive it to the other side of the town, it leaves you stuck there. This is frustrating when you were focused on completing that first particular district, so you have to drive all the way back, which depending on the area can be like a 5-minute drive. Yeah, it might seem like a small thing, but it's kind of frustrating. Like any other Lego game, you can pretty much play as any NPC you meet in the game or see in cutscenes. You just have to unlock their symbol and then buy it at either the police station or disguised chamber. Same goes for vehicles, unlocked in the same way, and there are dozens of them in the game. One of them is a wheelchair. I'm pretty sure this counted towards the total they advertised. The open world is a bit more grounded in reality than the levels, but there's still a plethora of variety, such as a farm and a city. I think Lego City is based off of San Francisco, leading the amount of games that take place here in this town at like 1,000,003? Maybe 1,000,004. Every district feels unique from each other. Even the town sections have their own distinct feels to them. Honestly, it's kind of impressive. I don't know how they did it. This game's just oozing an atmosphere. I do think while the game is great, it feels a little bit empty. While there are the millions of objectives to complete, there's really not a ton else, meaning that you kind of just get a feel for what the areas are going to be like when there are dead zones and what will actually have something to interact with. There's also like no music in the open world, meaning that 99% of the time you kind of just hear nothing. This especially feels like a wasted opportunity in cars, which when you drive have no radio stations like other games of this nature do. I get that they probably couldn't have licensed tracks for this game. I mean, the budget was probably already a lot, but like, there's nothing. It's a type of game that you really want to play with something in the background. Turn on a podcast or a YouTube channel you like or something. Ultimately, I think that this game needed something like side quests, and not just the car stealing missions, but like characters that would give you missions unrelated to the story, or characters you could talk to. The world doesn't have many interactable moments in the same way something like GTA does. You can't go to a restaurant and play darts, for instance, so in that way the game does feel a little bit more shallow. It's tough to describe what I mean. On the other hand, there are things that do feel a bit more fun than the open world in GTA. You can hop between cards by pressing the X button, for instance. You can get a streak by hitting objects in sequence, getting more bricks as you go. It's still fun and a great open world to explore, just in a kind of different way. Apparently, even though this game reeks of GTA, that really wasn't the inspiration, as I said earlier. I don't believe you, Lego. So you might wonder, with this game having such a vast, impressive, not to mention connected open world, how does it run? Especially when you consider it released on the Wii U. I've had toasters more powerful than that thing. The Wii U version runs well, damn well in fact, but there's one major problem: the load times. It takes over a minute to load into the main world. The GTA games, which I keep referencing, but seriously, they're similar, they weren't too far off of that, but I think with these load screens at least, you at least get something visually interesting to look at. There's characters and some catchy intro music to get you pumped up. Here you just look at a badge spinning. Wii. On the next gen ports though, you at least get to turn a little brick figure around. Wii? It's something, and the Switch version does load quicker at least, coming in around 50 seconds instead of a minute. And of course, consoles such as the PS4 and Xbox One load even quicker. I would hope so, otherwise why are we spending hundreds of dollars on these things? One thing that sucks about the Switch version is that the frame rate is very up and down, specifically tanking when you go near water. The game dips to like 3 frames per second. Man, why do all Switch ports have to be like this, man? The next gen remasters also added co-op support, which I couldn't test, but I also didn't want to set my Nintendo Switch on fire. I hope you understand. The addition makes sense at least. I think pretty much every other LEGO game included this after this game. Visually at least, the Switch version, and of course the others, look much better than the Wii U version. It's funny because I never even really noticed this until doing research, but the Wii U version actually looks a lot worse than I remembered. It has kind of this green tint all over it. I seriously didn't even remember this when I played the Switch version in 2017, it just looked the same to me. Finally, with version differences, one of the biggest things I remembered advertised as a kid, even in Nintendo Directs I think, where there would be a plethora of Nintendo Easter eggs throughout the game. A nice touch and a precursor to a future Nintendo and LEGO collaboration that would eventually be realized. And more expensive. You might think with the transition to the Switch they wouldn't bother, since these games would be on other consoles, but they actually brought over all of the Easter eggs to the Switch version exclusively, minus I think the ability to wear a Mario hat. Well, the game is ruined, everyone go home, 0 out of 10. So you know what, this game might not be the best game ever released, but it's really fun. It's dumb fun and has the potential to keep you busy for months, if not years, depending on how often you play games. With its vast open world with the dozens of collectibles, it's still close to 2 million on Wii U, and I'm going off of VG charts, another 2 million on the next gen consoles. It's not an accurate source, but for games like this, it's all I have, because otherwise they will not say anything about it. You might think that a game that was both a critical and financial success would be ripe for a sequel, a spin-off, or a continuation of the world in any form, but they kind of just dropped this as a series right away, and I really don't know why. The prequel game came out maybe a month later if you count that, but besides that and the 2017 remaster, nothing would follow. I don't get it. Did LEGO not like this game? Was it a failure to them? It baffles my mind, to be quite honest with you. You know you're screwed when you look for a sequel for something you like. You see like one article talking about it and it says basically nothing. You could tell it was just clickbait. Wait, who clickbaits with Lego City Undercover? I guess I fell for it, didn't I? So yeah, this leaves me at more of a loss than the game I reviewed before, Jet Set Radio did. At least that series you could argue sold like crap on the original Xbox, so Sega really had no reason to continue financially supporting it. So what's the deal with this game? It was good, it made money. What more do you guys want? They even set the ground for a sequel at the end of the credits. I want to know what that guy is gonna do to chase Mccain. If I had to guess, the licensed games such as Batman, Star Wars, Harry Potter, Jurassic Park, they're just safer, and they figured those will actually make money. It's very rare that Traveler's Tales takes a risk nowadays. All they've made pretty much are licensed LEGO games, but they did here, and it paid off. And still, we got nothing.
I did some digging. I looked for clues on the internet, and there's really nothing out there for this game, like, at all. I couldn't find a single piece of evidence saying that a sequel or anything was coming. So, Traveler's Tales, if you're listening to this, I know we've had our ups or downs over the past few months. I really didn't believe in you after Super Monkey Ball Adventure, I'm not gonna lie. But this was a great game. You guys did a fantastic job, and open world games nowadays can range from so mediocre to bad. But you guys understood it. You guys understood how to make an open world game, and if game companies like Rockstar aren't going to give us a GTA because they're too busy doing GTA Online, well, you know how to do it. Don't you guys get sick of making the same licensed games? I think the world, more than ever, needs a Lego City Undercover 2. So Traveler's Tales Get up, make this game. The world needs it, goddammit. Detective JeffCompass, signing out. God, this is so stupid.